story time about how my ex-boyfriend accused me of cheating on an all-girls trip. So a little background information, I was 14 or 15 around the time, and it was the summer of my freshman year. So within the last few weeks of my 8th grade year, one of the more popular boys asked me out, and we're gonna call him Carson. I wasn't like super popular at the school, but I was like a medium maybe. But I was raised in a super strict household, where the only phone that I pretty much had was one that was able to call 911 and my parents. And I especially was not allowed to be talking to boys. So Carson had the great idea of giving me his old phone, and throughout the summer I would text him on there. Well, I started realizing him getting really toxic. Anytime that he would see my Snapchat location change, he would be like, "Where are you going? Why didn't you tell me you were going here?" So I started distancing myself a little bit from him. Also because our relationship was just moving way too fast. Within the first month of us dating, he was talking about wanting to marry me. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my ex-boyfriend accused me of cheating on him on an all-girls trip. So like I said, I started distancing myself from him because he became too attached and was just way too toxic. Well, I was also in a lot of clubs in school, and a few of them would require me to go on trips. Well, the one that I went on was an all-girls trip, and before I left, I texted Carson letting him know that I wouldn't have my phone all week. Well, on the last night of my trip, there was a girls and boys dance. There was like a group of boys from a different school that we were meeting up with, and I tried staying back at the cabin, but they wouldn't let me. So we started doing dances that required partners, so I was pretty much forced to dance with one of the boys. Well, when I came back home, I got 100 texts from Carson, calling me a bunch of nasty names, and you can probably guess them. And somebody got a picture of me dancing with one of the boys, and Carson sent it to me and said, "We're done." So after that, I just ignored him. And then literally that night at 1 a.m., he was texting me saying, "I miss you, please come back to me," like for part 3. Part 3 about how my ex-boyfriend accused me of cheating on him on an all-girls trip. So like I said, I received over 100 messages from him. He got a picture of me dancing with one of the boys and said, "We're done." And then at 1 in the morning, he's like, "I miss you so much. Please don't leave me. Like, I've been doing so bad while you were gone." So of course I didn't accept his apology and I just blocked him on all my social media. And the next day I wake up to messages on my Instagram, my Snapchat, my Facebook. Like, who even uses that? Unless you're talking to family. Well, then Carson decides to tell everybody at my school about how I'm a lying, cheating scumbag. And now, 3 years later, no good guy from my school wants to date me. So now whenever I'm talking to a guy, I have to make sure that they're not affiliated with Carson in any way. But low-key, I had a really good glow-up, so all the hot boys want to talk to me now. And Carson's pretty much still a scumbag.
Is it wrong that my boyfriend wants me to watch rate corn? Huge trigger warning here. Please do not watch if you are sensitive to this. Take care of yourselves. I love you. My boyfriend and I have been together for 8 months. I just turned 21 and he's 33. He's always kind of been the perfect boyfriend, but a few months ago he started acting more like my dad. Started with him just telling me what to do, and then eventually he started trying to give me advice about everything I did. For example, he'd tell me how I needed to talk to my landlord and small things like that. And now I feel like it's gotten to the point where he wants to completely control me. Now here's the thing. I'm young and I don't know if I'm just overreacting or if I'm reading too much into this, but I know that sometimes he makes me feel really uncomfortable. Only 2 months after dating, he asked me to marry him, and I didn't say yes right away, and this really upset him. He accused me of wanting to stay single so that I could date other guys. I told him that I thought I was too young to get married, and that we needed to get to know each other before we talked about marriage. But here's the thing. He started getting so upset that eventually I said yes. So as of now, we're kind of engaged, but I don't really want to. He wants us to go buy a ring, and he wants to formally ask my parents. I called my parents to tell him about it, and they were totally against the idea. I agree with my parents. I haven't told my boyfriend, but things get worse. Started showing me the corn he watches. When I didn't want to watch it, he got really mad at me. Part 2 is it wrong that my boyfriend wants me to watch rate corn when he wants to do sexy time? Huge trigger warning. Please don't watch this if you are sensitive. Take care of yourselves. I love you. I was laying on the bed and he flipped his laptop over. That's when he says, "Here, watch this." It was kind of like regular corn. Nothing too disturbing, but it made me feel really uncomfortable. Told him it looked funny and he said, "Why would it look funny? You don't like it?" That's when I said, "Not really." At that point in my life, I had never looked up anything related to corn. It's not something that I was interested in. So I felt really uncomfortable. He turned the computer on and I couldn't see the screen anymore. For the next 3 hours, he stayed on his laptop in his room watching corn. I felt like I was interrupting him. I went to the kitchen and decided to cook. Dinner was ready. I asked him to come eat and he left me waiting another hour. When he finally comes out, his face was completely changed. And for the rest of the night, he was really quiet and kind of rude. A few days later, he brought up the engagement again. He asked me if I had time to go look at rings and reluctantly, I said yeah. He went into a jewelry store and he told me to just choose one. I told him that I didn't want to rush it and he said, "It's fine, just choose it now." Later on that night, I asked him to drop me off at my place, but he said he wanted me to stay over at his. When we get to his apartment, he gets on his laptop again. That's when he shows me what he was watching. It was rate corn. He tried to kiss me and I felt sick to my stomach. Part 3. Is it wrong that my boyfriend wants to watch rape porn when he wants to do sexy time? Huge trigger warning here. Please do not watch this if you are sensitive. Take care of yourselves. I love you. That's when he showed me the rape porn on his laptop. And he just lunged at me and tried to kiss me. I felt sick to my stomach. He asked me to sit on the bed, but I said no. That's when he said why. I told him I wasn't comfortable with what he was watching and that I really didn't like it at all. Then he just rolled his eyes and got mad at me. For the next 5 minutes, he called me a prude and told me that what he was doing was completely normal. And I guess part of me really did want to believe him, and he managed to convince me. I asked him to close the laptop because I could hear the noise. He said I was overreacting and told me to go home. So I did. Didn't speak to him for 3 days until finally he came over to my place. He acted like nothing had happened. Now here's the thing. I don't know if it's a normal thing or not, but I don't think it is. I haven't Googled it or anything because I don't want to, but I also haven't talked about it to anybody. What scares me is that he's gonna want to do stuff like that, and I'm not comfortable with it. It also concerns me that he has fantasies about that. That's something I would never ever want him to do. I made us dinner in my apartment and I decided to bring up the topic. That's when he said, "Can you just get over it? It's done." But I kept pushing and asked him some questions. I asked him how long he'd been watching that and if it made him, you know what. He said he'd only been watching it for a few days and that he already stopped and that he wouldn't do it again. Then he said, "You have to stop being a prude. I want to be with somebody who's willing to try new stuff. Otherwise, I'd probably end up cheating." This actually really scared me, so I told him that I would try anything as long as I was comfortable with it. I don't want him to leave me because I do love him, but what he was watching on his laptop really made me nervous. I don't think I have the courage to break up with him or anything, and I do want to be with him. I just want to find a way to help him with this and not make it a big deal. I haven't told anybody in my family or my friends. Maybe I should just to see what their reaction is. What should I do? Bye.
Am I wrong for telling a friend the real reason why a coworker wants to date him? I, 24 female, have a friend from work, 26 male, Ben. Over the years, coworkers told me that Ben was interested in me, but I brushed it off. When I met Ben, I had a boyfriend who is now my husband. Ben met him and was even invited to our wedding, so the thought of him liking me was ridiculous. I ended up confronting him about it, and he said that he did like me at first, but stopped once he realized I was taken. My husband knows this and is totally fine with it. I never saw Ben as anything more than a friend. 2 months ago, I caught a coworker, Kat, 23 female, crying in the parking lot after work. I asked what was wrong, and she told me that her boyfriend broke up with her and left the country after they found out she was pregnant, and she insisted on keeping the baby. Kate is white with blue eyes and blonde hair, and so is her ex. Most people in my country are tan and have brown eyes with black hair. This info was important later on. After the breakup, Kate went out on dates every day. The guys had one thing in common: blue eyes, blonde hair. I joked that she must have a type, but she told me that she was looking for someone to father her baby, so they had to look similar to her ex so the baby could pass as theirs. This horrified me, but it wasn't my place to tell her anything. A month ago, Ben and I had lunch where he told me he started dating Kat. Ben is the only guy in our office with blonde hair and blue eyes. I told him dating Kat might not be the best idea. After lunch, I went up to Kate and told her what she was doing is wrong and asked her not to do this to my friend. She laughed it off and said it's okay, he won't find out. I stayed quiet for a while, but eventually told Ben he should seriously stop dating Kate. He said he figured I'll try to break them up because I'm jealous. Man, I was disgusted before finally saying to not come crying to me when he realizes Kate is only dating him so another man's baby could have a father. I stopped talking to Ben shortly after, and everything was relatively peaceful in the office. That was until Kate announced she's pregnant. I could see the color drain from Ben's face as he looked in my direction. A huge fight broke out between the two of them after Ben demanded a paternity test while Kate tried to convince him it wasn't necessary. Kate called me later screaming that I ruined her life, so my guess is they broke up. The thing is, they really do deserve each other, so I'm starting to wonder whether I made the right decision by telling Ben the truth. If I hadn't, they probably would have gotten married and the baby would have had a loving father to look after him. Me personally, I would want to know. So I'd be thankful for someone like you if people knew and didn't tell me. If you're my friend, you would tell me so.
Am I the asshole for what I said after my husband commented on my flat chest? My husband, Jared. I don't know. What if she said something really bad? It could have been really mean. You're about to see.
But that doesn't justify commenting on someone's body.
This is true. My husband, Jared, and I have been married for 3 years. He's currently out of work, used to work at a high-paying job, but got kicked out of the company over a fight with a coworker, and I'm the one paying for rent and utilities. We dedicate some time to seeing his family weekly. They don't know he's unemployed because he thought they'll see him as a failure, especially his mom, so he told me to keep it a secret. Last night, we were sitting, eating dinner at the table. His cousin was talking about his fiancée going to Brazil to do a boob job. Jared asked if he was serious, then flattered future sister-in-law's boobs, saying they're perfect and that he didn't understand why she'd get a boob job. He then turned to me, stared at my chest while I was eating. I have a flat chest. I'm insecure about it, but don't do anything about it, obviously, and said, quote, "Hey, why don't you get a boob job? You're the one who needs it the most." His mom gasped and was like, "Jared." I then turned to him and said, quote, "I'll get a boob job once you get an actual job since you've been unemployed for 6 months now." He stared at me in
Honestly,
disbelief.
like he deserves it.
His mom began questioning him about being unemployed, and he denied. Then
He kept lying.
admitted it was true. It got awkward with his mom scolding him and others shaming him for it and for hiding it. He got so overwhelmed he went outside and stayed inside the car until I came out. He started yelling at me repeatedly, quote, "You couldn't have held your f***ing tongue." I argued that his comment about my chest was insulting, but he said he was giving me a piece of advice and that there's nothing wrong with him wanting me to look pretty and that he said what he said.
So he doesn't think she looks pretty?
He said what he said out of support and encouragement, but what I did was the complete opposite, and that it was intended to hurt him, and I succeeded. I called him later thinking he calmed down, but his friend said he didn't want to speak to me and I should give him space.
I feel like she should get divorced.
Give him all the space in the world.
He's obviously a very insecure person.
Well, all of this is like
He's
his own
reactive.
making.
He's a
Yeah.
reactive person. And my guess is his reactive personality comes from this insecurity whenever he gets challenged or, the type of person who would call their wife flat chested in public and then make it about I guess essentially gaslight them into making him feel like he was trying to do her a favor.
Yeah. I was supportive. I was trying to make you the prettiest you can be.
When people call in for my Ask Nick segments, I would ask her, tell me what you're grateful for in the relationship and tell me how he makes you feel.
Yeah.
I doubt she'd have a long list of things that she's grateful for.